This is how we redefine retirement, by building and designing a life we love, by stopping the things that we hate. Retirement, is it the American dream, or has it become kind of like the American ream? You know, this thing that we give up so much of our life for along the way, hoping, scrimping, sacrificing, saving, and budgeting our life away, trading our time for dollars so that one day, someday, we can finally enjoy life. Well, look, man, my dad's a coal miner. If you're a coal miner, that's a pretty good plan. You should definitely retire from that. But what if you created a life you didn't want to retire from? What if you created financial and economic independence, which is having enough recurring revenue, also known as cash flow, to cover your basic expenses? When that comes in, what you've got is choice. Choice of what you do day to day. Now look, I went to Italy for a while. It was pretty awesome, but there's only so many 4-hour dinners I could have. If that's what retirement was, I got a little bit bored, to be honest. What I was excited about was coming back to write, to create, to share this type of information with you. And when I was fully engaged in life, I didn't want to retire. That's why I'm doing this today. So what would it take for you to create economic independence? Not in 30 years from now. Not by accumulating, taking too much risk, you know, the set it and forget it mentality, you know, the diversify and wait until compound interest kicks in to finally save you so that one day, someday you can live off your interest. Well, unfortunately, people that are struggling in retirement are because inflation's robbing their purchasing power. Interest rates for a long time were so low it wasn't kicking off enough interest for them to live on. And taxes are consistently creeping up and supposedly on the rise. So what people thought was a dream has actually turned out to be a lot more of a nightmare. And a lot of it's because this entire notion of setting money aside and taking far too much risk in order to get a return and not being related to the outcomes of that income puts people in a situation when they finally retire, rather than taking the vacations they want or spending time with their family, they're checking the Wall Street Journal. They're watching that stock ticker and going, is this going to be a good day or a bad day? See, they start to intermittent fast. Before that was a health fad, just saying, well, maybe if I live off 2 meals instead of 3, I'll be okay. That's not the life that I want for you. That's not the life that you want for you. And so what's the alternative? What else can you do? And it doesn't have to be about struggle. It doesn't have to be about sacrifice. It doesn't have to be about budgeting. I mean, I don't know how about you feel with that word, budgeting, but I feel like budgeting kind of sucks. It's always about things that you miss out on now so that one day, someday, when you might be too old to enjoy it, you can finally do the things that you love. What if you could live a better life today? What if your quality of life and investing in yourself was actually the key to having a better life now and in the future? So what does that look like? Let's redefine retirement by creating financial independence, which begins with, rather than budgeting, plugging financial leaks. There's plenty of money that's leaking or lost in everyday life, going to the financial institutions, going to the government. And I mean, these financial institutions might be insurance companies, it might be companies on Wall Street, it might be banks. What if you could bank that money back into your life by simply knowing how to be more efficient? What if you could stop tipping the government and keep more of what you make there? Most people are overpaying on that, and if that money comes back into your life, you could reinvest it to create more cash flow. Or what if you could look at your loans and restructure those loans or renegotiate those interest rates or simply reallocate funds so you can be more efficient? There's a lot of people that are sitting in really low performing investments or savings accounts yet have high interest rate credit cards or even mortgages. And if they simply reallocate those funds, they get a guaranteed savings, helping them achieve financial independence. Again, this isn't 30 years from today. This is right now. This is improving your life in the next 72 hours, at least in the next 30 days, and maybe part of that money goes into that much needed vacation or getting some support so that you're not just running ragged. And maybe part of it goes towards the future as well. I think far too often retirement planning is always about 30 years from today. It's always about so far in the distance that it seems impossible, improbable, and it's not that enjoyable or inspiring. But if we can look at this modality of financial independence and begin with plugging your financial leaks, helping you keep more of what you make without having to cut back, you can actually enhance your lifestyle today. Now, what happens with that? Let's break it down for a minute. A lot of people get in this trap. I know because I was there in my 20s. This trap was, if I just work harder, I'll make more money. But if we work harder with the wrong financial philosophy, It can lead to devastating results, putting our money at risk and being over-leveraged, putting our money in investments we don't understand that provide zero cash flow, and ultimately having much too high of interest rates simply because we're trying to finance a better life along the way. So here we have a push and pull type of system, always stuck in struggle and effort, always profited with institutions by our confusion and ignorance. But let's stop that. Let's say, okay, we saved some money that you're tipping the government, which most people are, or restructure your loans or renegotiate those interest rates or reallocate some of your funds to improve your cash flow, or maybe even look at your existing investments and say, do you have any lazy assets? You know, those ones that don't seem to be doing much, something that you're waiting for them to finally perform, but it's not bringing in daily cash flow or monthly cash flow. It's just buy, hold, and pray. You know that system. Well, what if we found the hidden fees? What if we detected the non-performing fees and removed them so you could actually enhance and optimize that performance, or simply looked at ways to protect the downside so that every economic cycle didn't set you back 5 or 10 years? That's another piece to plugging the leaks, keeping more of what you make, and reducing your risk so you have more sustainable wealth. And finally, what if on this very first thing towards redefining retirement and achieving financial independence within 10 years, it was looking at the insurance companies? Now, nobody wakes up in the morning and says, you know what? I want more insurance company commercials. I want to give my insurance company more money, but unintentionally, that's what we do. We give these companies money because we have the wrong deductibles, or we don't have complementary policies that create discounts, or we don't know about things like umbrella policies or excess liability that can do more heavy lifting than the liability on a car or homeowner's insurance policy. Or maybe we have things kick in too early and they raise our premiums too high, or we make too frequent of claims, and ultimately those frequent claims we either get dropped or they increase our premiums, costing us more in the long run. When we can find the proper structure, when we can find efficiency within these policies, we can transfer risk in a better way without having to give up more of our life and money today. So these are the 4 I's, the plugging leaks. The first one is the IRS, stop tipping the government. The second one is interest, stop overpaying it. The third one are investments. Let's detect those hidden fees and remove them so you can keep more of what you make. And fourth is insurance. So I've kept it to the 4 I's. I know there's people living in Canada right now, or there's people that are living in Australia watching this. It's just not as sexy to call it the 3 I's and 1 T. So whatever your tax authority is, we're simply looking at the 4 I's to efficiency is the first step to financial independence. By plugging leaks and keeping more of what you make, you don't necessarily have to budget to get ahead. You just have to automate your savings plan. Yeah, this has been an age-old tactic and technique that somehow continues to get lost and people start over. But all it means is you pay yourself first very efficiently, very automatically. Every time I make a deposit into the bank, I want a percentage to go into my wealth capture account. And that's what we're here to help you do. Capture wealth, not have to create it through hustling and grinding and budgeting and all that hard work that ends up becoming so exhausting that we just want to give up. So when we automate that and we find the money for you, this is the first step. Now the second step, to become financially independent, where you have assets that create cash flow to cover your basic expenses, well, we have to just know what your basic expenses are. Where do you stand today? What's that number right now per month that if you had assets creating cash flow, you get to choose what you do tomorrow? If you don't go into work, all the bills are paid. If you choose to switch careers, you've got time. You've got that ability. If you want to have a bigger vision, you can now swing for the fences knowing that you're not going to jeopardize any of your family's stability or security. So to engineer wealth, we know what that monthly amount is, and we reverse engineer and say, first off, what's your foundational pieces? What are the things that aren't working together, or where are there cracks where money's slipping through? Where there's unnecessary risk because you simply haven't looked at this entire comprehensive plan because, I don't know, it's been almost intentional that finance is confusing. So that we just have to rely on the so-called expert and gurus that a lot of times get paid on a commission or transaction and neglect these other aspects of your financial plan. So how does your real estate coordinate with your investments? How do your taxes coordinate with your corporate structure? How do your cash flow and credit score, how does that work with your car and homeowners insurance? It actually makes a difference. So we simply look for inefficiencies in the design of your overall plan. Then we look for sustainability and security. When people feel more secure, when they have more peace of mind, life improves. So it's not something we're trying to retire from because we feel okay. We feel like we've got things handled. Most people don't have financial clarity. They don't have financial confidence. And without that peace of mind, they're losing sleep. They're feeling stressed out. They're feeling like they have to push harder, work more overtime, get a side hustle or a second job. And that can be infuriating when we're trying to raise a family or take care of our health or simply live a life that isn't about 30 years from now having a retirement. This is how we redefine retirement, by finding that stability. Now, the last piece in engineering wealth, and this is going to, I think, bring a lot of peace of mind for people, is rather than try to become an expert in everything, instead of trying to know everything that's out there in finance, like there's so many things. There's tax liens, and there's fix and flips with real estate, or there's commercial property, or we know about options trading that we hear about all the time, or mutual funds and stocks, or bonds, or simply, I don't know, there's so many different investments out there. People are looking at storage units, and should they invest there? They're looking at buying car washes. They're looking at, should they get into NFTs or cryptocurrencies? And because there's so much information, it becomes overwhelming to digest, and when it becomes overwhelming, we lead to just turning it over to someone else, and it becomes this paralysis, right? Analysis and paralysis. So how do we fix that? Well, it's focus. When you learn about your investor DNA, which is your values, which is your script for how you operate, which is your abilities, those things that you have a natural aptitude towards, and your drivers, the things you want to pay attention to. Here's kind of the secret to wealth. The ultra wealthy only diversify as a strategy for preservation, but on their growth strategy, they focus. So we look to focus with our investor DNA because risk isn't in the investments. Some people are good at real estate, some people are not. It's in you, the investor. So what would it take to become a better investor? To focus on one thing to help spur your growth, knowing that you've already plugged your leaks, knowing that you already have a foundation that's secure, so you've got some ability to protect yourself and your family. This is what helps you take off. So the first step is plug financial leaks. This is going to help you to become financially independent. The second is to engineer wealth. Find out what that monthly number is, reverse engineer, and use your investor DNA to focus and move to step 3. We look to create cash flow instead of accumulate. Accumulation is really about, it takes money to make money, which isn't true. It takes resourcefulness. It takes something called mental and relationship capital. It takes value creation. But a lot of times we get defeated thinking it takes money to make money, and we got to give our time for our money, and that's the trap. There's other things that say high risk equals high return. But in this methodology, it's about lowering your risk to improve your return long term by creating cash flow and efficiency. And then there's other things that say the best things come to those who wait. Well, a lot of things pass by those who wait. That accumulation mentality is problematic and dogmatic. So that's why we're in the cash flow mindset. Now, the fourth piece of this is to scale revenue. Whether you're an entrepreneur and you're looking for upside potential, or whether you're an entrepreneur that you own a business and you look for ways to tweak to increase your profitability. Maybe you improve your margins. Maybe you improve your revenue by bringing in the right people or the right philosophy. There's so much that can be done there. But the fifth piece is my favorite piece by far. It's to make it count. Now, what do I mean by make it count? This is the ultimate way that we redefine retirement. We make it count when we build a life that we love, when we take time for a hobby, when we take time to invest back into ourselves, when we have time for self-care, when we don't give up so much of who we are just in the name of a paycheck that we have nothing left for anyone else, including ourselves. At this point, why would you ever want to retire from value creation? Why would you ever want to retire from investing in alignment with your investor DNA or living what I call your soul purpose? This is the ultimate way that we invest in ourselves. Soul purpose is a little bit like investor DNA. Investor DNA is kind of a practical application in the world, where soul purpose is who we are when we're at our best, fully self-expressed. Soul purpose is our values, like investor DNA. It's also our abilities, but it's ultimately looking at our passions for the highest context of living. It means we've designed our day. We look at our calendar and say it's a representation of who we are and what we want to do. And most people don't do that simply because their greatest obstacle, their biggest enemy, which could actually become their ally, is money. We feel so confused and frustrated in this world about money. We do what everyone tells us to do by budgeting, by setting it aside, by waiting, by hoping, by working hard. But working hard isn't enough. Simply giving up our time to do things that we hate so that one day we can live a life that we love ends up creating habits that are hard to let go of. It builds a vision and perspective of scarcity, where we feel limited with our time, our money, our ability. Fear, doubt, and worry take over, so every economic concern becomes our burden that robs us of our sleep and our health and time with our family. I get it. I've been there. I went through the difficulty in 2008. I was over-leveraged. I was overworked. I was doing everything I could to prove my value in my bank account. But your bank account doesn't reflect your potential or determine your destiny. But it is something that's required in today's society. It's required unless you're going to have a loincloth and live out with a bow in the woods. I'm not good enough to do that. I'm a little too metro. So I live here, and what I decided to do is really dial in, what is money? How does it work? What are the frameworks that help you to have financial independence? And what it means is we have to opt out of the system that says you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, and you just have to trust everyone else. I'm here to help empower you, to give you insight so you can question what has become the norm, and the norm has absolutely led to 95% of Americans not being financially independent by age 65. It's not a lack of effort, it's the wrong philosophy. It's a lack of framework. It's having the information that says, hey, don't worry, you'll be taken care of. These people are so smart. But the thing is, if we can cut through the noise and we can look at this framework, plug your financial leaks, engineer your wealth, accelerate your investments by creating cash flow, scale your revenue by investing back into yourself and your contribution that grows the outcomes of what your income is directly tied to, and finally make it count. So you build that life you don't want to retire from because you've invested in yourself. You're engaged in the life that you live. And I get it. It's difficult because a lot of times people, like my kids, they're not sure, what's my career going to be? And if people get into debt too early, before they know their career, they circumvent the process of finding the right career for them and jump into the first thing that helps them pay the bills. And then they get into a place where they feel like they're in bondage to their money, where they're in bondage to a career that they don't enjoy and that they absolutely hate. And ultimately, because of that, they have no energy left for their finances. But if we could recover that energy, if we could transform the relationship with time because you have more energy doing the things that you enjoy, it doesn't mean that I get to do what I enjoy all day long. No. I still have business meetings that aren't always fun. Sometimes I get stuck in my writing process, or not every video goes well, or technology fails, but it's just that it's enough of an engagement. It's inspiring enough, and the vision is compelling enough that I'm willing to deal with that minutia because the majority of my time is spent in things that enhance my energy. So what if you knew now you can get rid of 90% of the confusion around money just to discover your investor DNA? And that you no longer had to budget if you simply plugged your financial leaks and automated your savings. And then you got to invest back into your life, which includes the things you enjoy along the way and improving your skill sets. This is how we redefine retirement, by building and designing a life we love, by stopping the things that we hate, preventing us from having the energy because we simply find money that helps us delegate or helps us create a transition into a career that's more fulfilling. How about you join this movement and say, no more waiting to 65, no more letting someone else write the story of your life, that you take control and responsibility, you plug your financial leaks, you get financially well off simply by being in the know and discovering your investor DNA, and no longer have to rely on retirement planners that are based solely on commission instead of tuition. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe. Don't miss out on a single Wealth Factory tip, like this next one, brimming with ways to build your wealth.